Hi, this is Cactus Connect. I'm Isabel Pascal.
I'm Gabriel Clark.
I'm Smith Rooker.
And I'm Alexis Furious.
So first, we're going to look over what our app looks like on the iPhone. So at the very top, you can see that we can search events. So for example, we're going to search dance. So after we search, we can see that the Sedona Dance Festival has pulled up. We're going to click it. We can see now that it's expanded, that it's on Friday, May 2nd, and the time, the place, and then what type of event it is. We can hit register for event down below. It'll take us to the event's URL. So if there's anything not listed information-wise, you can look at the URL and get more information. And now I'm going to give it over to Alexis Urias.
All right, we're going to go through the Cactus Connect API. So if we go ahead and look at the get API call and we execute it, we'll get a list of the cities in our database along with their UUIDs. All right, and let's go ahead and pull the Chandler UUID. We'll just copy that for a little later. So if we look at the post cities, we can create a city with that. All we'd have to do is just edit the JSON body and then execute it. And then moving on to the get cities call, we can go ahead and paste that UUID and execute it, and we should get Chandler. And as you can see, it returns Chandler and successfully. All right, and then going through the put, we can also update a city by pasting the UUID, just as an example. All right, and then if we look at the events, we can get events. It does take a little while for us to get it, but if we go ahead and look through all our events, generally we have about 20,000 of them in there for our users. If we go ahead and pull that first UUID, we should get that events back specifically, a networking event, if we want to do the get call for that. And as you can see, it does pull that event for us, which is awesome. And then we also have a post call for creating events, but we won't go over that too much. And then we also have an update event if we wanted to. We just have to use the UUID and then go over that. But this is our API documentation, and I'll pass it off to Gabe.
Okay, cool. I'm going to share my screen and go over some of the database queries that we're using for this. This first one here is just to add an event, submit an event to our event table with just a bunch of placeholder information. So if we go ahead and run that query, give it a second to
Gabe, you are
complete.
sharing.
I am sharing.
He is sharing.
Oh, my bad. Sorry.
We can see that that query returned successfully. And so if we go over and look at submit screen now, it should show that it is updated. Let me know when you show that submit. I can't really see.
All right, he's just refreshing it.
I'm refreshing the app and we're waiting for the events to load, and then go see the demo event that's loaded up in the app.
Okay, perfect. And then if I go over here, if I wanted to update that, I change. If I just want to change the name to update test, just to show that it's working, I'll go ahead and run that. Give that a second to complete. Okay, it completes, and then submit again. We'll give that a refresh, and it'll show that it did in fact update.
It updated to update test, as you can see in the app over here.
Perfect. And then if I wanted to delete that that event isn't happening anymore, whatever, I can just run this. Sorry, nothing was connected. And it deletes that event from the table. And then our last one, just if I wanted to like search for certain events or for a specific category, for example, community outreach, I could run this query and it should spit out all of the events that have to do with community outreach that have a category tag of community outreach. And we can see we have 3 here: the Scottsdale Food Bank Volunteering, Feed My Starving Children Women's Group, and the Charity for Children 20th Annual Golf Outing. And we have all of our attributes, our location, day, city, ID, everything. And yeah, and with that, I will pass it back to Smith to go over the code.
Okay, so I'm just going to go over the code really quickly. The Swift UI application is fairly straightforward. We only have 3 different elements in the 3 different files. They're all written in Swift because we want it to be a native application. I'm just going to fire up the preview over here. And while it launches, I'll go over the content view. So basically, we have we're importing Swift UI because that's the framework we're using in order to run this application. And we're gonna be. I just filtered out a couple event UUIDs that I thought would look good because we don't want to show over 10,000 UUIDs. And it basically we're just defining an API event, UUID name, URL, description, categories. It's also further defined in event item that I'll go over later. We're fetching we're asynchronously fetching the events from this API call route. And if there's an error, we just like skip because we expect the API to exist. In a better implementation, we would have error handling, but it's fine over here. Essentially, we just like add this to the event icon that's defined again in the event icon that I'll go over later. And we filter out the events, and this is how the search bar works. It basically filters out title, subtitle, and it searches for this, which is why if you search DAN, the hip hop party might show up because they both of them talk about dance, not just this one. Going down lower, we have the placeholder loading screen. That's when you refresh the app, it'll show loading for a couple seconds while the API replies to us. Going over to the event items section, basically we have defined a structure over here, a title, subtitle, just how it is, and it with type hinting. So we hint like, okay, so the date, and we have your URLs and UIDs. As you can see, it's a preview. It's just the basic, the elements that make up the content view, essentially the components. So going down lower, we have the date box. So we have two of the dates stacked on top of each other. So the text 1, text 2, padding around it, and we have the green color background. We have the event details, so the 3 different events with the, and this is the icon, the tiny icon over there. And we have the subtitle. The subtitle is concatenated down to 70 characters because we found that was a good size for the subtitle. And this basically just shows that it's searchable. And this is the preview, and it shows us that this is a preview, and it the URL, and this is what the preview is seeing over here. Hopping over to the event details section, we have the event details tab that's going to load up in a couple seconds. Again, we pull out the formatter to format it exactly how we wanted, and we frame it. So we have the rectangle for the header, followed by a vertical stack with a calendar, a map, like there's a couple of pins, so it'll show us the calendar icon, the map and eclipse icon, and the tag icon. I'll show you exactly what it is once this loads. We have a divider just for spacing purposes. That looks like it crashed. It might be because I'm still in a simulator. Let me close the simulator and relaunch that. Okay, there it is. So the text is just the next text you see over there, and we have the registered event and registration unavailable. So if I go ahead and delete the URL from inside this, so I do CI, boom, that deletes that, and registration goes to unavailable. If I bring that back to register for event. Now going over the API code, so jump over to the Swift API, jump over from Swift to VS Code. We're using CyclePG2 as the connection to the database. As a database interface layer, essentially. So we're getting the database name, username, password, PGIP, and port from the env file that I'm not going to show because I don't want to leak the password. We're just adding some CORS origin because both the database as well as the API route is hosted on the same server. So we want to make sure it's accessible, and then we can go through the different API routes. So the health route basically just connects to the database and runs a query and sees if the query returns anything. And if it does, it returns okay. And if not, it returns an exception. This is the post for creating a city. Basically, you just insert into city, and then you insert whatever values you want as a post request, and it'll create a city. This is updating the city, basically exactly what it says it will do. It'll update the city based on the name and your UID where you insert it. And this is getting the cities where it just selects every city in the list and prints it out. This is commented out because we don't want people to be able to delete our items in the API that's hosted because we don't have auth implemented. But so this is basically, it'll run a delete command to delete the UUID. The events, this is creating an event, essentially the same thing as the cities where it'll insert an event with the specified information. This is getting the events where it'll get all 100,000 or 10,000 events. In the future, I would like to implement parsing, so maybe you can query only the first 100 events or something like that. But for now, we're just running everything. Going onwards, we have updating the events or getting the events with a specific UUID. So you just enter the UUID and it searches for the UUID and prints it as a Python dictionary. And returns it as Python dictionary, sorry, so that it shows up as an API route. Going into the update events, basically it gets all the names, it updates it based on the UUID, and you have to provide the name, URL, description, whatever. And if there's an error, it'll say error updating the event. Once again, we have the delete that's commented out because we don't want people to be able to delete in the situation. And we go over and we use Uvicorn, which is included in Fast API as our API router. We also have a requirements.txt and a README file. You can also look at the documentation yourself. If you navigate to this URL, it'll take you to this page where you can take a look at how our API works and run some queries yourself. That's everything for Cactus Connect. I'm glad, and thank you for taking the time to listen to our presentation. Hope you had a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.